COP. And we have Mr. Stewart Magnus, the Global Director for the Nature and Director Global Forest and Climate Change Program from the IUCN Global Headquarters, and Mr. Pradeep
Vivek, we cannot hear you.
Yeah. Sorry, I think there was some disruption. Am I audible, sir, now?
You are audible now. We lost you for about 2-3 minutes in between.
Yes, we lost you in between.
Yeah. In between, there was some connectivity, I think, fluctuating. Today, there is some problem. So I was just briefing about the today's eminent panelists. We will have a video message from Shri Prakash Javadekar, Minister of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, who is also presently President of the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification. We have Mr. Stewart Magnus, Global Director, Nature-Based Solutions Group and Director, Global Forest and Climate Change Program from the IUCN Global Headquarters. Mr. Pradeep Monga, Deputy Executive Secretary, United Nations.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah.
We are also having galaxy of other eminent ambassadors like Ms. Dia Mirza. She will also be joining. She is a UN Environment Goodwill Ambassador and United Nations Secretary General Advocate for Sustainable Development Goals. Mr. Ricky Cage, United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification Land Ambassador and also UNICEF Celebrity Supporter. So we have a very strong support from Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Mr. Jigme Tapka, he is also Joint Secretary and UNCCD focal point. He will be joining. We have Mr. Siddharth Sharma, he's a Group Chief Sustainability Officer, Tata Sons. Then Mr. Rathore, Chief Policy Advisor from the International Center for Integrated Mountain Development. Mr. Lokesh Jaiswal, PCCF Telangana. Mr. Deepak Kumar Singh, he is the Principal Secretary Forest, Government of Bihar. So welcome, Deepak. And Mr. Rajiv Kumar Garg from the PCCF UP will be joining in between. So once again, I welcome everyone. And also today, as we know, that is the global media campaign of the IUCN Bonn Challenge Landscape Restoration Initiative. So before proceeding further, I will just very briefly update you about the IUCN, though everyone must be knowing the IUCN, but the background is that IUCN was set up in 1948, just after the World War II. It is the largest environmental conservation network. And it is unique in the sense that it is a hybrid organization in which the national governments are also members, civil society organizations are also members, and institutions are also members. And this network globally presently stands for more than 1,400 members that include various national governments also, and also more than 15,000 IUCN Commission members. IUCN has a commission system in which the knowledge products are created through these commission members, and they are experts, researchers, and one of the key knowledge product by which IUCN is known as that the red listing of the species. And we have 6 commissions: Species Survival Commission, Commission on Environmental Law, and like this. In India, this network stands for more than 40 members of the IUCN and more than 1,100 IUCN Commission members. And in its journey of more than 70 years, IUCN has played a very vital, important role in shaping the global conservation agenda, which I will be showing in a very brief video. And IUCN is also having an observer status with the UN General Assembly. Importance is that different nations speak of their national interests confined to the respective geographic boundaries, but the voice of the environment that is common to everyone, that is raised by the UN representative, IUCN representative at the UN General Assembly, so that discussion leads to various type of actions at the global, regional, and local level for setting the conservation agenda and initiatives. So just before taking further, let me show you a very brief, short documentary that will capture the IUCN's journey from 1948 until now. Thank you. This was a short video. I think there was some problem in seeing the video. So this video was just capturing the IUCN journey since 1948 till now in shaping the global conservation agenda. And now post 2020 biodiversity framework, IUCN is very much involved. And IUCN also launched the global standards on nature-based solutions last month only. As we see that the present COVID pandemic is also somewhere rooted in the disruption with the ecosystems or our disconnect with the nature. So that's why for all the actions, we have to integrate the nature-based solutions, and landscape restoration, the Bonn Challenge initiative for landscape restoration is one of the examples where the nature-based solutions will address various global as well as other national objectives in terms of meeting the UNFCCC goals or countries, INDC targets, the biodiversity targets, and also land degradation neutrality target. So with these words, I once again welcome everyone. And to take it further, on this today's occasion that we have Mr. Stuart Magnus. He's a Global Director of the Nature-Based Solutions Group and Director of the Global Forest Climate Change Program. And he has been instrumental in many initiatives in the IUCN, ranging from heading the Nature-Based Solutions Group with overall responsibility for IUCN's works on the ecosystem management, forest, water, gender, social policy, economics and business, and biodiversity. Has more than 28 years of experience in various thematic areas related to natural resource management, biodiversity conservation, and sustainable development. Wide field experience, and during past 12 years, he has been recognized as a leader in conceptual development and promotion of forest landscape restoration, an approach which has now been adopted by many national and international policies and initiatives, including the Bonn Challenge to restore 150 million hectares of impoverished and degraded landscape by 2020 and 350 million hectares by 2030. And today, or especially the 2020 being the landmark year of this Bonn Challenge initiative, which was initially launched in 2011 by IUCN and Government of Germany. So with the vast experience of Mr. Stewart Magnus, may I request him to brief all the panelists and all the participants today on the occasion of the global media campaign of this IUCN Bonn Challenge initiative, that what is the global perspective and how through the Bonn Challenge we are taking various type of initiatives, encouraging various countries to make more and more pledges. So welcome, Mr. Stewart.
Okay, and thank you very much, Dr. Saxena. And I'd like to say just how delighted I am to be able to join such a distinguished set of panelists this afternoon to focus a little bit on the Bonn Challenge and the progress of forest landscape restoration. I think I'll begin by reflecting something we all know, that there's a lot of depressing news around at the minute. There's increased geopolitical tension, there's the global challenges and crises such as climate change and biodiversity loss with real long-term, potentially even existential consequences, particularly for the most vulnerable people and the poorest nations. And then, of course, we've got the COVID-19 pandemic with at least 26 million cases globally and over 3.5 million cases in India alone. And that's even before we begin to consider the medium and long-term consequences, both in economic terms and broader societal terms. So against that backdrop, I think it's really welcome to have a couple of hours, to have these 2 hours with you, with the participants and the panelists, to focus on a story of optimism and hope, and one that I think we can really show has delivered real, tangible benefits and action on the ground. And again, and I would even contend that may actually point the way forward once we get past this current phase of dealing with the pandemic and think about how we build back better. Now, my own journey with forest landscape restoration began 35 years ago, actually almost to the day, when as a very young, as a 22-year-old, I arrived in the middle of Tanzania to work on community-based agroforestry and woodlot initiatives. And then for the next 15 years, I spent my time working with and being educated by local communities and farmers in field-based initiatives in Sudan, Ghana, Costa Rica, and southern Mexico. So that's very much sort of where I suppose my appreciation and my understanding of landscape restoration is rooted. But by the time I joined IUCN at the turn of the century, I think it's fair to say that tree planting was in danger of falling out of vogue internationally. Conservation had been seen as something maybe a little bit passé. Conservation attention certainly was focused a lot more on protecting intact areas of forests and other natural ecosystems, and indeed in the forest sector, really making sure that we move towards sustainably managing working forests. And while these were indeed very important global priorities, it certainly did deserve an awful lot of attention. Several of us, and I think several of us who had actually just come quite fresh from a couple of decades working in the field, felt that there was we couldn't give up on degraded lands. Excuse me. We couldn't give up on degraded lands. We couldn't give up on the communities and the farmers and the people who rely on those lands, and that restoration had to also be part of that vision. So it was protecting and sustainably managing, but also critically restoring had to be a part of that story. So that is sort of where the starting point was. Now, unfortunately, at that stage, restoration was, and part of the reason why restoration and tree planting seemed to be falling out of vogue a little bit, was because it was frequently associated with just the establishment of single species plantations, often exotic plantations. And so I think the first task really was to try and reframe what restoration, what landscape restoration really meant in terms of delivering multiple goods and benefits, of being able to be focused on local needs, local priorities driven by local agendas. And again, really sort of emphasizing that there was no single one-size-fits-all template, but rather a range of options that had to be derived by local needs, necessities, and priorities. So that was really sort of starting to frame restoration in that context. And then critically also, and this is where the word landscape came in, to say that restoration couldn't just be looked at on a site-by-site basis, but it really needed that perspective across different land uses and land sectors. And that really, I think, was where the concept of forest landscape restoration was born. I like to think that forest landscape restoration was really born in the field, and that the reframing of our understanding of what tree planting and restoration meant was really based on direct observation and experience on how forests and trees integrated with and delivered multiple benefits across a range of different land use practices and land systems. And I would say that that field-based lesson learning can still be seen in the FLR principles that guide the Bonn Challenge. And just very quickly, I'll highlight what those are. First of all, the importance of focus on the landscape, being able to look across different land uses, being able to integrate restoration activities on both agricultural land and forest land. The importance, and I've mentioned this already, the importance of being able to tailor the restoration activities to the local context and making sure that it is demand responsive, restoring multiple functionality and for multiple benefits rather than just focusing on a single good or a single service. The importance of adaptive management, because we are in this for the long term. There will economies change, the different there's different demographic changes, and we need to be able to accommodate those and work with those, and that requires adaptive management. There was also the sixth principle is really the need to maintain and enhance natural ecosystems. So we can't just restore on one side and destroy on the other. We need to ensure that as we're restoring, we're also safeguarding and protecting the remaining natural ecosystems. And finally, and critically importantly, that we engage with stakeholders and with key stakeholders right through the restoration process, from the planning and identification of needs to the implementation and over the longer term in adaptive management. So just to maybe sort of to conclude this first part of the framing, forest landscape restoration and indeed the Bonn Challenge is clearly much more than just tree planting. It's about an ambition to transform degraded landscapes and actually support and enhance the livelihoods of individuals and farmers and communities who actually live there, with the aim of not just having a single one-size-fits-all approach, but a range of approaches that deliver a whole basket of benefits, ranging from food security to job creation to climate mitigation and adaptation, etc. I'd also say that the forest landscape restoration, and Dr. Saxena has highlighted this already, is the first purpose-built nature-based solution that has been effectively implemented globally. And we've now got well over 20 years experience of doing this methodically. And as Dr. Saxena also mentioned, we've now launched a nature-based solution standard, which I would say has been informed quite heavily by our experience of forest landscape restoration and the Bonn Challenge, among other initiatives. So I'll just, for over the next couple of minutes, I'd just like to give you a little update status on where we are. The Bonn Challenge, as you will know, was launched in 2011, and as it was set as a global goal at an event hosted by the government of Germany and IUCN. It was a purely voluntary mechanism. It's not underpinned by any international convention or agreement, but it was designed very much to complement and support actions in pursuit of international agreements as well. The original target was 150 million hectares set in 2011. And the idea would be that by this year, 150 million hectares would be under the process of forest landscape restoration. And that's important because obviously restoration takes time. So the idea was to get the commitments, start to get the action in place and see if we could achieve a target of 150 million hectares. Now, I'll admit, I thought at that time, oh my goodness, that's quite a lot. Will we be able to achieve it? 3 years later, then, the ambition was increased to 350 million hectares by 2030. And again, I thought, oh my goodness, how are we ever going to achieve that? There's ambition, and it's good to be ambitious, but maybe this is just being a little bit over ambitious to the point of crazy. But I think where we are now, where we are today, is we have more than 210 million hectares pledged from 74 different from countries and subnational entities and a couple of private sector. So we've surpassed, well surpassed the original 150 million hectares by 2050, or by 2020, should I say, and we are well on our way to achieving the 350 million hectares by 2030. As I mentioned, these are voluntary pledges. 61 come from countries, 8 come from subnational entities, and 5 from other associations of non-government and private sector. India, I will highlight, has made the largest overall pledge. A total of 21 million hectares, 13 million hectares by 2020, and an additional 8 million hectares by 2030. There's also, as I mentioned, also the other thing is it's not just countries that are doing this, but it's also subnational entities, and we've got and private sector and other associations. And one of the important things, of course, pledges are nice, pledges are great, but they've got to result in action on the ground. That's why we're all here. And so I think one of the initiatives that IUCN established, actually at the request of several governments, was to put in place what we called a barometer. And we called it a barometer deliberately because it's not a strict compliance mechanism. It's about actually tracking the progress, seeing what way things are moving, being able to inform governments of how progress is developing. And so we put in place the barometer, which really sort of identified not only the hectares on the ground, but also where the success factors going in place, whether there were policies, domestic budgets, the capacity building, whether that was being put in place, and then also looking at the benefits of restoration as well. Obviously, not just in terms of hectares, but also in terms of carbon sequestration, jobs created, biodiversity benefits, etc. And I'm really pleased to say that what we know now is not only do we have 210 million hectares pledged, but of those hectares pledged from a subsample, from a sizable subsample that we have tested, we can reckon that about 56% of those pledges have already been turned into real action on the ground. So we're really starting to see that this is really building momentum, that governments are changing policies, putting laws in place, putting incentive programs in place, and we're really seeing work really taking root. Indeed, in a couple of countries, they've actually surpassed their original pledge. The US and the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province in Pakistan have both exceeded what they originally pledged in terms of action on the ground. And now, actually, very soon we will have over the next course of next year, we'll be working with 40 countries to really assess progress and with the barometer, and we'll be reporting that in the middle of next year, subject obviously to the limitations of COVID-19. So just in conclusion, then I think I'd just like to highlight I talked about initially focusing on optimism and success and a good news story, and I think that's what we really have here. So the interesting factor is, well, what makes that the case? Why do we think that we have seen such progress over the last 9 years? And I'd just like to highlight a couple of factors. Number one, I think is absolutely critical, is national and local ownership. There was no country, no community was compelled to do this. They did this because it responded to demands and needs that were nationally defined. There was a great emphasis placed on engagement of the relevant stakeholders, whoever that is and wherever that was, be it Indigenous peoples, be it local communities, be it women's groups, be it private sector, really making sure that the right players were engaged to work that through and to really help move that forward, and that their needs were being reflected in the plans. I think the other thing that we did, and this is where I'm very proud of my colleagues in IUCN, such as Dr. Saxena, because I think IUCN really tried to work with governments and work with its members and its state members, such as the Government of India, to put in place a series of sound technical tools and approaches, such as the Restoration Opportunities Assessment method, to really identify where the best bets lay in terms of restoration. And also, as I mentioned before, the barometer, to be able to track and report and learn from progress that's underway. So in conclusion, looking forward, I think, today, this anniversary of the launch of the Bonn Challenge, is a significant event. We have already surpassed our 2020 milestone, and we are well on the way to reaching the target of 2030. And when we do, just to qualify this, the area of 350 million hectares is 10 times the size of Germany, where Mr. Momha is currently sitting. And so, this is of global significance. The current 24 hours period on the Restore Our Future event, which we're participating in at the minute, really offers a unique snapshot from across the world. So in conclusion, I would like to say, I think we are very well placed. We have the success of the Bonn Challenge was one of the motivating factors for the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration, which we'll now work on for the next 10 years, and really starting to leverage and drive this idea that investing in nature, driving that according to local needs, really can bring benefits for people, biodiversity, climate, etc. And so I said, I started off by saying the news can be depressing, and indeed it can, but I think initiatives like the Bonn Challenge offer those seeds of hope that when we start to think about how we'll build back better, how we'll respond to the challenges of dealing with the COVID crisis, we will be able to find ways that deliver benefits for jobs, land productivity, dealing with climate change, biodiversity conservation. So again, I'd just like to say I'm really delighted. Thank you very much to the colleagues who organized this for inviting me, and I am very, very pleased to be part of the panel in celebrating what has been real success, both at subnational, national, and global levels. Thank you.
Thank you, Stewart, for giving an overall perspective of the Bonn Challenge, and especially today when IUCN is having the global media campaign during the Bonn Challenge landmark year of 2020. And meanwhile, we have been also joined by Mr. Ricky Cage, UNCCD Land Ambassador and also Grammy Award winner, and also by Mr. Jigme Takpa. He is a Joint Secretary and UNCCD Focal Point. Hi, Ricky. And Mr. Deepak Singh, he is a Principal Secretary, Forest, Government of Bihar. And taking it further, I think the momentum which has been generated by the global perspective, which Stewart has just shared. So I will just share a very small promotional video to motivate everyone for the landscape restoration. you. And this was a short promotional video to motivate everyone. But we have also been motivated by the India's pledge. As Stewart also mentioned, that India's pledge is stand under the Bonn challenge, 13 million hectare by 2020 and additional 8 million hectare by 2030. And during UNCCD COP, Indian Prime Minister announced that India will bring additional area of about 5 million hectares under the landscape restoration. So total commitment from India for restoration stands at 26 million hectare. That is the largest pledge globally, and IUCN India is also supporting Government of India in reporting as well as compiling various case studies and all. So on this occasion, we are having one video message from Shri Prakash Javadekar, Honorable Minister of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, and he's also presently COP President of the UNCCD. So please.
As we know, land can divide nations, but landscapes bring them together. We experience this every day. In Sundarban, the most eco-sensitive zone, one of the most eco-sensitive zones of the world, is shared by two countries, Bangladesh and India. And we manage it jointly on many fronts. So I congratulate IUCN for organizing a webinar series to bring together various experts, practitioners, and media people to champion the cause of landscape restoration. As you know, India was president of, and we hosted 14th COP on land degradation. Restoring the land is a very important and has become more important in present day crisis, because restoring moisture by planting trees, by augmenting water and fodder, by various methods, you can restore lands. India had originally taken target of 13 million hectares to be restored by 2030. We then enhanced in the Bonn to 21 million hectares. And when India hosted the COP14, the Prime Minister of India increased it further to 26 million hectares of land restoration target. We will become land degradation neutral state country by 2030. And therefore this target is very ambitious and we'll achieve it. The program is already underway. This land restoration will help mitigating climate change. We have already decided on the creating carbon sequestration through additional forest, and which will create 2.5 billion tons of carbon sequestration. This is a huge target in the world. And we are going to achieve it by increasing forest, making moderate forest into dense forest, degraded forest into moderate forest, and having very big amount of plantation, horticulture mission, and agroforestry. All this will add to India's achievements, and this target we have decided are very important. This land restoration is key to humanity's connect with the nature and species conservation across all geographies, and India would be taking up this huge task on hand and will make it successful. So all the best, IUCN. We will definitely make it happen and we'll share our best practices to the world. We are ready to exchange.
So thank you very much. This was a message from Shri Prakash Javadekar, Minister of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, with the pledge and commitment that we will make it happen. So now may I request Mr. Pradeep Monga, Deputy Executive Secretary of the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, and he has been supporting the cause of land degradation utility. So Mr. Pradeep Monga, he will be talking about the UNCCD initiative for land restoration and linkages to Bonn challenge and land degradation utility targets. May I give a very brief introduction of Mr. Pradeep Monga, that as Deputy Executive Secretary at UNCCD, he provides strategic support to the convention that links environment and development to sustainable land management and contributes to the global efforts to reverse and prevent desertification and land degradation. Prior to joining UNCCD, Mr. Monga worked in various positions in UNIDO, UNDP, and Government of India. So welcome, Mr. Monga.
Thank you very much, Vivek, once again for inviting me to address this very important webinar and join August panelists here. I could see a lot of champions, land champions here, especially Ricky, our land ambassador from UNCCD side, and of course, Mr. Jigme Takpa, who's our focal point in Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Government of India. Colleagues, friends, let me begin by recalling the fact that exactly a year ago, in September 2019, India hosted UNCCD Conference of Parties COP14 at Greater Noida premises, part of National Capital Region. It was a huge success. Huge success in terms of outcomes, huge success in terms of participation. And let me compliment Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Government of India, for showing its leadership, commitment and vision to promote land restoration efforts through land degradation neutrality by 2030. And here, of course, I would like to compliment Mr. Jigme Takpa, our UNCCD focal point, for taking the lead role right from the beginning till end. This year, 2020, was supposed to be the super year for many ways. And of course, we are going through a COVID-19 pandemic. So many things which we wanted to achieve or wanted to do have been postponed to next year. But nevertheless, I do believe it is a super year in many ways that shows our resilience, our commitment, and of course, efforts to move on, connecting land with nature, human with nature. And if 2020 is supposed to be one of the milestone year of the Bonn Challenge, and of course, IUCN is running a global campaign to promote this milestone. I would like to again compliment Vivek and his wonderful team, IUCN India, really for organizing this series of webinars to showcase India's initiative related to forest landscape restoration. I hope many speakers before me have already spoken, including Honorable Minister, that India has raised its ambition from 13 million to 21 million the Bonn Challenge, and now it is 26 million by 2030. And that shows, again, commitment at the highest level in India, really to promote what we call making this world land degradation neutral under SDG 15.3 by 2030. But again, like Honorable Minister mentioned, is also this efforts will support India's nationally determined contribution NDC under climate change commitments to achieve additional carbon sink of 2.5 to 3 billion tons. Now, when we talk about main drivers of land degradation in India and elsewhere, we are almost talking about the similar issues. We are talking about intensive agriculture practices, unplanned urbanization, land use changes, unsustainable patterns of production and consumption, recurring droughts, and of course, growing impacts of climate change. Of course, when we really look at COVID-19 crisis, which we hope will be under control by early next year or by end of this year, we are already talking about post-COVID world and what importance or significance it can have on building back better, like our Secretary General says. And that's where the countries and important initiatives India is taking can really help moving towards more green jobs, green energy, green technologies, and of course, green economies around the world. On India's commitment to achieve land degradation neutrality by 2030, we are also talking in a sense about protection and improvements in natural capital for economic development, enhanced food and water security, but also the quality, and of course, unlocking opportunities in terms of jobs, livelihoods, and incomes for rural vulnerable populations, and through sustainable value chains. And of course, maintenance of ecosystem services, functionalities for resilience, for natural disasters, cleaner air, richer biodiversity, of course, adaptation and mitigation under climate change. Let me also give you some thoughts from UNCCD perspective when we talk about overall framework to address land degradation by scaling up conservation and protecting forest landscapes. At the level of planning, we are talking about optimizing land management interventions through integrated land use planning for long-term social, economic, and environmental benefits. We want all these three pillars to go together: social, economic, and environmental. At the ground level, we are talking of achieving land degradation neutrality by avoiding, minimizing, and reversing land degradation. That means more than just setting restoration targets, we are also working towards elimination of drivers of land degradation, improving sustainable land management in coordination with national policies and global agreements. And that's where UNCCD comes in very strongly. When we talk about India and when we say build back better in post-COVID world, we're also talking about moving towards more clean energy systems. Like we feel that moving towards more renewables, solar, wind, and other technologies are much better options than going back towards fossil fuels. We're also talking about promoting global solar farms on degraded lands in Gujarat, in Haryana, in Rajasthan, and of course, Madhya Pradesh. Just recently, I recall, and in Asia, one of the largest solar farm was inaugurated in Madhya Pradesh. And this becomes, again, a very good example. In India is taking lead where the cost of installing solar power and, of course, solar powered electricity being generated from micro and national grid is really one of the cheapest in the world. But the most importantly, it is estimated that the way India is moving towards 100 gigawatt of solar systems by 2030 or earlier, it could generate as much as 1.6 million jobs for rural communities, even by 22, next 2 to 3 years itself. And of course, this number will increase as the year passing. So this is simply to showcase that linking land with multiple benefits of food, water, and energy can really come up with a lot of multiple and choices and opportunities for people of India. Farm-based solar energy microgrids, especially in remote areas, can really also help farmers to go for value chains at the local level. A good example can be reducing cost in water pumping and irrigation, as well as harvesting. We're talking about transportation, storage, and processing. Of course, energy independence also helps rural jobs and value addition at the local level. Business model of Madhya Pradesh Solar Park can demonstrate alternative income generation activities also for rural communities. There are also other significant opportunities for forest restoration in India where the local communities are empowered. I'm very happy to mention here, and I was going through Forest Rights Acts of 2006, where Gujarat, Maharashtra, and many other states, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Odisha, with significant population that depend on forest produce follow the suit on community rights program over forest in the past few years. And this is a very good example where I feel the ownership of land tenureship can really play a very important role. Rights and land tenureship for the local communities together, of course, forest conservation going hand in hand. For us in UNCCD, when we talk about land degradation neutrality, it is not simply about land. It is also for jobs and livelihoods, environmental and human health. COVID-19 has very clearly mentioned, brought out very clearly for all of us that human health and nature must be always linked. Otherwise, human survival will not be possible unless we start investing in nature. And when we talk about nature, essentially we are talking about land, air, and water. And coming to the cost, from UNCCD, we always look at the cost when we talk about ground realities, and we are also talking about ground level initiatives. International Resource Panel estimates that we need to restore 350 million hectares per year by 2030 to meet the global targets of land degradation. And a conservation estimate where we are talking about $300 to $400 per hectare. We are talking about almost $100 billion per year between now and, of course, 2030, if we really want to make this world land degradation neutral by that time. Let us put that in also another perspective. OECD conservatively estimates that level of harmful environmental subsidies at $5 billion per year based on fossil fuel subsidies and global support to industrial agriculture. So here in one case, we are spending almost $500 billion on harmful, we call subsidies, not smart subsidies. And here we are talking about $100 billion a year. So it means somewhere we should be very clear at the global community as well as at the national level, how to really bring it together very closely towards making a difference when we talk about land restoration on the ground. Is it worth it? Nature's contribution to people are worth estimated $125 to $140 trillion per year, more than 1.5 size of the global GDP. So here what are we talking is, whatever nature is giving us in terms of land, forest, air, water, all these things and ecosystem services are much more bigger than what we talk about few initiatives at the ground level. And that's where the time has come from the pilots to move on the scale-up programs. And here, when we talk about India, we are talking about restoring 26 million hectares between now and 2030. And I believe if you really look at the cost of that, we are talking about almost $1 billion a year between now and 2030. And I'm sure that Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change is taking the lead role along with other partner agencies and departments. But we do believe that given the fragmentation of land agenda at the ground level, state level and national level, we need more of integrated approaches, integrated national policies, where we can bring in land restoration more closely with other national development priorities and planning processes. And here, I feel one area emerging very, very clearly is public-private partnerships. And I do believe the time has come where private sector must be given much more, you can say, proactive role in restoring the lands as happening in the rest of the world. And I do believe as a part of CSR, corporate social responsibility, as well as investment options as a business model, private sector can play a very increasing role in between now and 2030 in achieving this 26 million hectares of restored land for India. And it can be a game changer for India so far as food security is concerned, water conservation is concerned, of course, coming up with the renewable energy systems. India Legacy Program, which is under development, and I'm sure Mr. Jigme Thapa will speak about it when he gives his intervention, can be also a game changer. We are talking about pilots, projects, programs, not at 1 million, 2 million, or 30 million, 100 million. We are talking about 450 million, $500 million programs for few 3 or 4 states, or we are talking about when entire country, it can be replicated in many ways. So I do believe that time has come for India to move into the scale of investment in land restoration. And where land has been restored, it has to make it more productive. And then also linking to sustainable production and consumption, you can say patterns, that will really make India on a very progressive pathways in achieving its all SDGs. Let me conclude. Given the size of India, which is almost 2.4% of the global land area and 18% population, it makes a lot of practical sense. It makes a lot of policy sense. And
so you are not audible.
I was not audible at all.
Yeah, no, you were just no in between, sir. So thank you for your sharing your thoughts.
Sorry, I mean, there was
giving the global. Yeah, last minute was just 1 minute. And sir, we are now joined by Miss Dia Mirza. So welcome to Dia Mirza ji. And she is an actor, producer, UN Environment Goodwill Ambassador and United Nations Secretary General Advocate for Sustainable Development Goals. And your support for this Bonn challenge, cause of land degradation, even during last year when India hosted the UNCCD COP, has been tremendous. And certainly during today's global media campaign, your message and your motivation to all the audience at the national as well as global level will have a lot of impact in meeting these challenges, especially when during the COVID time, when we have learned that we have to ensure our connect with the nature, care for the nature. So I would like to request you to briefly update that what do you perceive that what are the biggest challenges in meeting the nature conservation, and what should be our approach towards the nature conservation? And as an UN Environment Goodwill Ambassador and SDG advocate, what are in your views can be done to achieve the Bonn Challenge commitments? So Ms. Dia Mirza, please.
Thank you so much for having me and giving me the opportunity to speak to and engage with so many distinguished people who have joined today as speakers, not just in India, but the world over. You know, I was listening in, and so much of what was said is something that we've all heard again and again. It is impossible to perceive progress, opportunity, health, and of course, achieving the sustainable development goals without understanding that fundamentally all human lives are interlinked with nature. And until and unless each and every one of us understands this fully and understands the role that we play at an individual level in establishing this relationship that is unfortunately broken with nature, there is no way we will be able to build back better. Because the fact of the matter is, wherever we see environmental degradation, destruction, devastation, we understand that it has been caused by apathy, irresponsibility, a lack of commitment or understanding. And to be able to shape that, change that, and change the way people treat nature, treat the environment, and help more people understand that our lives, the lives of their families, their well-being is linked with nature. We need to keep reinforcing this understanding every opportunity we get. But also, I think it comes from an individual level. I can't speak for others, but I can speak for myself that at an individual level in my everyday life, I think of the many ways that I can reduce degradation of land, that I can reduce degradation of water, that I can improve the quality of soil by managing my waste at an individual level, by composting waste, by growing more trees, by consuming more responsibly, by not living a life of wasteful consumption. And I think that young people across the world now are beginning to understand, appreciate, and practice this far more than they did earlier. And we can see youth-led movements across the country, especially in India, and of course globally, where young people are partnering with governments, young people are innovating, young people are challenging industries and businesses that are harmful to the environment or are not, producing and functioning responsibly, and also are making lifestyle changes at an individual level. And I think that really goes a big distance. The Bonn Challenge is achievable, which is why it is so exciting that it exists. It is a roadmap that helps us all take cognizance of the fact that we have degraded our land significantly, and we can, within our lifetime, by honoring this commitment, by participating in this challenge, truly reverse the adverse impacts that we've made on our land. And I'm very excited that India is demonstrating the level of commitment that we have. I know Jigmeet ji, who I have interacted with very closely, and he's always been the one who's been telling me about how land degradation is a very serious, a very urgent concern. and that we need to build many more partnerships and do a lot more work to see our commitment through as participants of the Bonn Challenge. I think when we think about 26 million hectares of land for India under restoration, and we think about the next decade to achieve this, we just need to start mobilizing faster and more passionate action towards seeing this through. And I hope that young people in our country, including myself, can be a part of this effort. And I do believe that every time I plant trees, I'm participating in restoring our land.
Thank you so much, Diyaji, and certainly your message, the encouraging youth and the passion with which everybody should take a pledge to restore the land, and this next decade is certainly very significant, and the pledge of 26 million hectares by India. And I think certainly your motivation and your passion will motivate all the sections of the society, particularly youth, and we will be certainly taking it forward. And IUCN is really grateful to have you here today and for the support of this global cause during the global media campaign of this IUCN Bonn Challenge. And we are really very grateful for joining us today. And give one key message for the webinar, which should be taking one of the motivating factor for everyone to take it forward.
I think my big takeaway from everybody that I've heard today has been so far that the most important, the biggest need of the hour is to build partnerships, is also to create some kind of incentive for more people to come forward to be a part of this challenge. I really believe that CSR can really help us achieve this goal. And I do know that there are very many young people across the country who would love to grow more trees and do more work in land restoration. So if there is some kind of policy framework that can be established that can encourage and invite young people from across the country where they have identified land areas that they can grow trees, adopt those trees, see them through their entire lifespan, I think that would be a wonderful achievement and help us all achieve this goal collectively.
Thank you so much, Diyaji, for your encouraging words, and certainly we will be looking for your continuous guidance and support for making this, for ensuring that this pledge during this coming decade, we are able to see that we achieve not only this pledge and even beyond that. So
thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And IUCN is really grateful to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, let me request Mr. Jigme Takpa. Everybody knows him. He's a joint secretary and also the UNCCD focal point. The key person and for taking this landscape restoration movement at the national level and the guiding everyone. So Mr. Jigme Takpa is an Indian Forest Service officer, and he has vast field experience of now nearly more than 28, 29 years. And he has worked in the field, especially in the cold desert area, where there are a different type of challenges in respect of the land degradation, equality, and the land degradation. So welcome, Mr. Takpa. May I request you to briefly update us about what are the initiatives being taken by India especially during UNCCD COP presidency, where not only as a COP presidency, you have a challenge to ensure that what actions we take in India, but also encouraging and motivating other countries also towards the restoration and the land degradation utility targets, and how these targets are linked towards the Bonn Challenge commitments.
Thank you, Vivek Saxena, especially for inviting me for today's the first decade, of your IUCN pledged to land restoration, and I really commend IUCN team that you have such a small, very energetic and enthusiastic team. And we have found that you have been very, very active, especially in the terms of all the initiatives of the Rio Convention, whether it is climate change. Can you hear? Yeah, okay. So whether it is climate change or biodiversity or the land degradation, you are in the forefront. So I really compliment the IUCN team in India and the IUCN Secretariat in Germany, and they have been doing extremely good work. And especially there are so many international conventions and so many UN convention for restoration, for combating climate change, or for the biodiversity conservation. So, but one thing I have seen, especially among all, that IUCN has been doing extremely well. Maybe because the name that you have termed, it is, in other things, when there's a convention, you met a country to commit, everybody stands back. You don't want to commit anything. So, and during the COP 21 in Paris, it was asked a voluntary commitment. So many people came in front and that voluntarily committed for climate change mitigation targets. So during that time, IUCN and the government of Germany, they have come with a very innovative word, a challenge. You are ready to challenge yourself. You are ready to challenge a commitment to the world, commitment to restore the degraded forest and the biodiversity and land. So every country jumped and said, okay, we are going to come up with so much of challenge, and we are ready to face it, and we will ready to restore that much of land. So though it is not very, very big in terms of the total degradation. So total degradation around the world is more than about 2 billion hectares, and out of which 350 is still a big challenge for the world. Now, during the G20 summit, everybody is saying that, the challenge should be about 1 billion hectares of land. So that should be the challenge sort of thing, but that also contributes to Bonn challenge, that is 350 by 2030. So India has taken a lot of steps, lot of commitments, and India is in the forefront. As everybody has said, I don't want to reiterate the numbers, but it is 21 million hectare, the Bonn challenge. Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi has enhanced the ambition to 26 million hectares. But another thing is that that is a land degradation neutrality. By the time it is 2030, so many lands will be already degrading more than what we have at present. In India, it is 96.4 million hectares. It is degraded land. So by 2030, it will come to about 100 million land which will be degraded. So in the process of recovering the degrading land or to bring it neutral, so will be 4 million hectare will be more degraded. So though it is not announced, but internally we need to go up to 30 million hectare will be restored. It was that is not announced. It is not official. I just want to technically, for India, it is 26 million hectares of land restoration, and for neutrality, we need to even go for more, 4 million more. So it comes to about 30 million. I don't want to announce as a country, but the thing is that internally, once we are going for land degradation neutrality, we have, by the time you achieve neutrality, you must have degraded 4 million hectares as business as usual. By the time you have to get the neutrality, 4 million hectare will be additional one. So that is the thing. Though India is highly committed, and Honorable Prime Minister has committed not only that India will be achieving this target, but India will be helping other nations, especially under the South-South cooperation. India is going to establish a center of excellence in ICFRA, Indian Council for Forestry Research and Education. There will be establishing a center of excellence where we will be exchanging our and sharing our best practices, knowledge about land degradation neutrality, the land degradation science, and combating desertification, drought, biodiversity loss, climate change mitigation, adaptation, all these techniques, all this science and knowledge that India has gathered, and all the space technology that we have. So India is willing to share with the rest of the world. So that was the commitment made by the Honorable Prime Minister of Government of India at that point of time. So now we have a division in this Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, which is called Desertification Cell. In that cell, now it is a very small group of officers and scientists. So we are working to map out all the land in India, each and every land of area, every inch of land in India, at the level of national level, at the level of a state, at the level of a district, and we are going to the level of a village, and we are going to see which are the land which is getting degraded. We are going to see the various uh, drivers of degradation for each and every land, and we will be coming up with the various programs. We have already mapped all the schemes that Government of India has at the national level, at the level of a state, as well as level of a district. All these schemes are being mapped, so that now it is not only the mandate of Ministry of Environment and Forest, it is the mandate of the whole country. So the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmer Welfare, Ministry of Rural Development, Department of Land Resources, Ministry of Panchayati Raj, and Ministry of Jal Shakti, all ministry are coming together and working on a common platform to restore the degraded land and to restore the biodiversity and mitigate and combat the climate change. So all the three conventions that India is working towards, and India is committed to restore the every inch of land that is getting degraded, so that this will not only will be getting the for provision of food, livelihood, shelter, as well as economic benefit in the terms of economical development, and as well as for a peaceful, healthy society. India is working towards it, and I am sure we'll not only achieve that target. We have all the data which shows that we will surpass this target. At the same time, we are ready to share all our technologies with other countries. So I thank especially the IUCN for inviting me for this very webinar. I thank our mentor and our Deputy Executive Secretary, Mr. Monga, to be part of this. I thank Shri BM as Rathore to be part of this webinar. And I have special thank to Miss Dia Mirza, who was a brand ambassador during our COP14, UNCCD COP14 last year. She has been very passionately and advocating our cause of combating land degradation, biodiversity loss, and climate change mitigation and adaptation. I thank you all. Thank you for calling me for this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for giving the perspective and the initiatives which are being taken by the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. IUCN is really grateful to you and also Sir Secretary, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, and also Minister Shri Prakash Javadekar ji, Minister Environment, Forest and Climate Change. And now we have Mr. Ricky Cage. Everybody knows, and he has been a very strong advocate for all the environmental issues, and he is also now the land ambassador of the UNCCD. Mr. Ricky Cage is an Indian composer, music producer, and environmentalist. In 2015, he won Grammy at the 57th Annual Grammy Awards. Mr. Cage was named as UNCCD Land Ambassador during the UNCCD COP14 last year to raise public awareness about the challenges of land degradation, desertification, and drought. And during last year UNCCD COP, the momentum he generated through his music and his concert, that was really motivating and very encouraging. And not only during the UNCCD, at the global level, during various events related to the climate change, biodiversity, he has been part of it, and he is passionate towards raising people's consciousness toward the environmental issues. He is also UNICEF India Celebrity Supporter, UNESCO MGIEP Global Ambassador for Kindness, and he is also an Indian ambassador for the Earth Day Network. And for today also, he has given a very strong, passionate message. And I think we will be playing that message just after first we listen to him. And so welcome, Mr. Ricky Case. So I would just like you to request you, besides sharing your thoughts and motivational words for on this occasion for during the media campaign on the Bonn Challenge target, music is a powerful catalyst that moves people from understanding their environmental responsibility to make everyday decisions that mean taking less from the nature. So based on your passion towards the music as well as towards the passion towards the environmental issues, how do you ensure, or what steps or what do you recommend on this occasion today to take it further?
Thank you so much, Mr. Vivek, and it's hello everyone, namaste. It's a huge honor for me to speak at this webinar with such great people and so many familiar faces over here. So good to see all of you. Of course, Mr. Pradeep Monga, always an honor to be on the same platform, and Mr. Jigmet, love your new hairstyle, pandemic hairstyle. So first of all, I congratulate the IUCN for globally supporting and promoting the forest landscape restoration approach and pretty much surpassing the 150 million hectares commitment mark. And of course, I've seen quite closely how passionately the IUCN India has been working towards this goal and all the wonderful work that they've been doing. Now, if I may introduce myself again, I'm Ricky, I'm a musician, I'm an environmentalist, and I've dedicated my life and all of my music towards making music on sustainability and raising awareness on various social causes related to sustainability. And last year I had the privilege to perform, as was mentioned, at the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification Conference of Parties, that is the COP14, and I learned so much over there. And I was also appointed as the UNCCD Land Ambassador. So I got the opportunity to spend a lot of time with Mr. Vivek Saxena and his wonderful IUCN team. And also I spent more time with Mr. Vivek Saxena at the CMS Vatavaran Film Festival, where I was a member of their jury. Now, as we all know, almost 30% of India's land area is undergoing degradation. The process needs to be reversed because degraded land loses the ability to support plant life, cannot provide ecosystem services such as management of water systems, storage of carbon dioxide, and tackling land degradation could improve the livelihoods of 60% of India's population that depends on agriculture and related activities. So it's obvious that we need to preserve our ecosystems, because if we take care of nature, nature will take care of us. And now all of us on this planet, not just us in this room, but everybody, all of us on this planet know about the ecological problems that we are facing. Everybody knows about deforestation, climate change, species extinction. We keep reading about forest fires on a daily basis. But in my opinion, the biggest threat to our environment, the biggest threat to us as a human species, is the constant thought that we have that somebody else will make a difference. We're always waiting for governments to make a difference, for intergovernmental bodies, for NGOs, for corporations, for leaders to make a difference, when the truth is that we ourselves need to make a difference through behavioral change in our own lives. Now, just as Mahatma Gandhi has said so many years ago that we need to be the change that we want to see. I mean, that is so relevant in today's times, especially with what is happening with the environment. And with everybody being aware of all these issues that we face on the planet, as I mentioned, that is threatening our very survival, the golden question is always, how do we convert all this awareness that everybody has into action? How do we bring about behavioral change in every single individual? And my answer has always been the same, that it is through art, and especially through the emotional language of music. Now, music is not just a powerful language to communicate a message to the end listener, but it is also a very powerful medium to retain that message deep into the consciousness of a listener. Now, songs that we learn during our childhood are songs that we never forget. The morals that we learn through those songs or those nursery rhymes in our childhood are morals that dictate our lives and our life decisions forever. And we always remember those morals. Now, even big brands like FMCG brands and all these other brands like Google, Microsoft, Levi's, Lee, Airtel, Vodafone, Hindustan Levers, Toyota, detergent, soaps, all of them use songs in their television and radio commercials to have a much stronger effect on the audiences and to sell their product, because they're always trying to sell something and they use music to sell these products. Every country has got a national anthem. and it brings about solidarity among its citizens. You know, as soon as we listen to the first few notes of our national anthem, we immediately feel proud to be Indian citizens or citizens of any other country when we hear the respective national anthems. And that is the power of music. Now, in keeping all of this in mind, and the fact that I am a musician and an environmentalist, I decided to dedicate all of my life and all of my music to the environment. So now every single piece of music that I make is about making this world a better place in my own small way. And you'll never see me making pop music or filmy music or love songs. The only kind of music that I make is about the environment and sustainability. Now, in doing this, I take two approaches. Now, what I call a ground-up approach and what I call a top-down approach. Now, the top-down approach, by definition, as we know what it is, it's where I perform to world leaders, to industry leaders, to political leaders in intimate gatherings where I reach out to them very emotionally through music and encourage them to use their immense power and let sustainability be a part of their narrative. So I've performed 3 times now at the United Nations headquarters in New York and in Geneva, numerous times to Fortune 500 companies, to conference of parties like the COP14, as we discussed. And then we have the ground-up approach where I reach out to thousands and thousands of people through my concerts, where I try to empower each and every individual in the audience to believe that they themselves are capable of making a huge difference by just bringing about incremental change in their own lives. That's all they need to do. They don't need to change the world. They just need to make incremental changes within their own lives. Now, pre-pandemic, of course, I was performing to large audiences, my largest audience being about 80,000 people in a stadium. I performed in arenas, in auditoriums, and music. I perform my music now in more than 35 countries. And now during the pandemic, I do online concerts and I reach out to millions of people all over the world through this music. Now, if we talk about creating a more environmentally conscious society, we need to start with the children. And as I said earlier, the songs that we learned during our childhood are songs that remain with us forever. So what better way to reach out to children with these environmental messages than through music? So it is with this belief that I created my project, my dream project, that is My Earth Songs, in collaboration with UNICEF. So My Earth Songs are 15 songs and very memorable children's songs based on the 17 Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. So we have songs on land degradation, we've got songs on plastics, on underwater life, on innovation, gender equality, teaching children what a carbon footprint is. And all these songs are very simple. They're like nursery rhymes. What we've done is that we've taken these complex issues and we've simplified them through song and music for kids, almost like nursery rhymes. So when you listen to these songs once, it'll completely stick in your head. So we launched this project in 2018, and since then, these songs have appeared as part of the educational curriculum in more than 4.9 million textbooks all over the world. And in India, it's available in all Macmillan publisher textbooks across the CBSE and the ICSE syllabus from classes 1 to 8. So if you look at all the textbooks from class 1 to 8, these songs appear in the textbooks. So we've also seen some amazing results where, children have forced their school authorities to go carbon neutral, to ban single-use plastics. And we've also received so many emails that children are shaming their parents into action and shaming their parents into being more environmentally responsible. So the songs have also been released globally by Universal Music and can be accessed by everybody in the world completely free of cost. Now, when it comes to climate change, land degradation, everybody used to say that no one is capable of behavioral change. No one will start consuming less. People will always want to drive in their cars. People will always want to fly in planes. It's impossible for governments to come up with rules and legislation that goes against the economy. Well, if this pandemic has taught us anything, it is that if people believe that there is clear and imminent danger to their own lives and to the people they love, then they are capable of massive behavioral change. And governments too will do their very best to protect the lives of their citizens by thinking of safety first and then of economy. Now, climate change, as we all know, is the biggest existential crisis we've ever faced as the human species. Land degradation is going to cause the displacement of over 135 million people by 2045. So what we need for climate change is better communication. Now, as a joke, what I always say is that climate change needs to hire the publicist of COVID and use that publicist to do their messaging, because the COVID messaging has been very good and it has been about clear and imminent danger. Now, I do believe the arts and music can make a huge difference because what we need most is behavioral change, which will behavioral change in turn will encourage a top-down approach from the governments. Because at the end of the day, that's how a democracy works. And the only way to do this is not through speeches or through distribution of scientific data, but by interpreting the scientific data and interpreting these speeches through the simplified and very emotional language of music and through song. So thank you so much for having me as part of this webinar. Very, very happy to be among all of you.
Thank you very much, Ricky. Can you just give one or two motivational, you can say, part from some of your song like that to motivate everyone?
No, I guess what we could, of course, I can't perform my music right now because, like I do not have my instruments and all with me. But the thing is that what I would like to say is that it's very important. Again, coming back to the most cliched statement ever by Mahatma Gandhi, that is, be the change you want to see. It's cliched because it's true. And that's why it's said again and again. It's even more relevant in today's time than it ever was. So I guess that, all of us, even the people, the participants and the panelists on this webinar, we need to lead by example. And that's really important, in terms of what I've done in my life is that I've given up my car. So I do not have a car. From having 3 cars all the way till 2014, I do not own a car. I only use public transportation. Everywhere else, everywhere I go in the world, I have only 11 sets of clothes. So if you go on my Instagram, I'm one of the very few celebrities who all the pictures have got the same clothes on them, because I do not I do not consume that much. And also, when there used to be air travel, when air travel was rampant and I used to do my concerts, I used to try to keep my carbon footprint low by sequestering, by mitigating my carbon footprint. I used to audit my carbon footprint and I used to sequester my carbon footprint through an agency. So till now I lead a carbon negative lifestyle. So I think it's important for us to lead by example, and that's how we can bring about behavioral change.
Thank you, Ricky. And I think on this today's occasion, your message is really very motivating. And may I, with the message which you have given to our campaign also, so for the benefit of everyone, for today's panelists and attendees, we will just play your short message which you have given today's occasion.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Hello everyone, Namaste. I'm music composer Ricky Cage, and in the first milestone year of the Bonn Challenge 2020, I congratulate IUCN for globally supporting and promoting the forest landscape restoration approach and surpassing the 150 million hectares commitment mark. Now, this approach is not just about maximizing tree cover. It's about restoring a whole landscape to meet present and future needs for forest goods and environmental services. Now, degraded land produces less food, stores less water and carbon, harbors less wildlife than healthy land, which has direct and dire consequences for the well-being of at least 3.2 billion people, as well as numerous wildlife species. Now, by aligning land restoration commitments, countries could bring more and more degraded land back to health. Now, many countries are taking many steps towards protecting, sustainably managing, restoring degraded land by committing to national and international initiatives. As 2020 also marks the completion of the first year of India's presidency for the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, that is the UNCCD, the Conference of Parties, that is the COP14, it gives me a special sense of pride to see how IUCN India has been working to compile and showcase encouraging success stories of restoration from all over the country, giving us all hope that yes, we can fulfill our commitment to bring back nature for our own well-being. Now, forest landscape restoration and the Bonn Challenge have the potential to help our governments deliver on their promises that have been made to our constituencies, like jobs, clean water, food security, resilience towards climate change. Now, together, we can achieve the Bonn Challenge.
So thank you very much, Ricky. Together, we can achieve the Bonn Challenge. The message and motivation will take us forward. And thank you very much. And may I now request Mr. BMS Rathore. He is presently Chief Policy Advisor from the International Center for Integrated Mountain Development. And he is also well known. He was also the UNCCD focal point when he was Joint Secretary in the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. And he has a vast experience as we are running short of time. So I will not give detailed introduction because everybody knows him. And Mr. Rathore, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Vivek, for inviting me for this wonderful event which IUCN has lined up. I just want to really tell you that right now I am in a very landscape and something like walking the talk. So if you see, I just want to, so this is the agro ecosystem right here, water harvesting here. You can see this. So Vivek, I think we have actually, I'm speaking right now from a very natural landscape, which where we have decided to actually live now and a year's time from now. So one thing is immediately what goes to our mind is this area has degraded areas as well in the forest area. If you see right there, and so am I audible? Can someone tell me that if I'm audible?
Sir, there is some interruption in the voice between.
Okay, let me just try and see if I get a good signal. Is it better now?
It's better.
Okay, Vivek. So
Again,
just
sir.
now coming. First of all, I wanted to tell you that again problem.
Again problem, sir. Hello. Hello, sir.
I think what you can do is you can switch off your video, which will.
I'll switch off the video.
Yeah, that's right.
Then
Yes.
see what.
Yeah,
That is it better now?
it's better, sir.
Yeah, I was trying to share in a landscape where I'm right now standing, and wanted to show you some of the feature of this landscape, which has a degraded forest area. It has agro ecosystem. It has a water body which we have just harvested the rainwater, and so what I was trying to say also, in 6 months from now, we would be actually devoting much more time to this landscape. So something like walking the talk. Vivek, just picking up on what Jigme actually talked about, 26 million hectare of land, degraded land, which actually has been pledged under the Bonn challenge. I think one of the things which we have been doing as foresters is to look at the natural regeneration, which is one of the most cost-effective nature-based solution. And one of the figure actually which has often been quoted is if you invest $1, you get an investment, a return on investment up to $50 on the nature-based solutions. So to our broader estimate of the 30 million hectare of degraded forest land which India has, roughly 70 to 80% will fall in a category whereby minimalistic interventions, if you're able to protect this area, the nature will bounce back. And this is the beauty of the natural regeneration. I have seen in my own professional career as a forester, so is the case with many of our colleagues who are sitting here right now, that it really takes very, very little and cost-effective is the key word here. I mean, believing nature that it will bounce back, provided we take off few things like protect it well and control few things. So this nature-based solution, I think, is something which is really going to help us if we really want to achieve those targets. And we assist nature only where it is required, not all over. My second take on this is we have to really, as one of our speakers was talking about, the landscape approach and the landscape restoration is which we are looking at right now. And I think this landscape approach has been in vogue for quite some time. Green India Mission is one of those missions which uses the landscape approach to the hilt. And same thing has been happening to some of those ecosystem improvement program, which World Bank is now doing in India and maybe elsewhere. So I think looking at the landscape approach, which we have now been with us for almost a decade plus, maybe 2 decades, there are some wonderful lessons which are coming up. One is you treat all the lands in the landscape at the same time, irrespective of the land tenure. If there are degraded lands, then I think the landscape approach will allow some way to bring these lands under restoration. And second, of course, message is there is a multi-stakeholders partnership, which is very critical if we want to address effectively degraded lands, because the drivers of degradations are multifold. And unless you bring all the stakeholders, all the agencies on board, the landscape approach will not work. So it's not sectoral, it is multi-sectoral. It is not one discipline, it is multidisciplinary. So this is why I think we look at this. We have I work now with AC Mode, which is looking at the Himalayas, and we have also been engaged with the transboundary landscapes, which, like, one good example is Kailash Sacred Landscape, which 3 countries, India, Nepal, and China, share 30,000 square kilometer of transboundary landscape, which is called Kailash Sacred Landscape, has some wonderful demonstration in Pithoragarh districts, where you have livelihoods improvements along with the ecosystem restoration. And also access and benefit sharing using the Biodiversity Act. So I think many things actually can go together as we look at these landscape and how the landscape approach has to be taken up to a scale. My last 2 points are, one is, I think Dia Mirza was talking about, this has to become everybody's business. This has to become a people's movement. So I also want to use this forum, and Vivek, you are pretty much part of that larger initiative, which Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, and our focal institution like GB Pant and other partners, including IUCN India, is now getting engaged with, which is Himalaya Calling. And Himalaya Calling actually is something which is very much similar. And but we look at the Himalayan ecosystems in India. Indian Himalayan region is a very wide area, 12 provinces and states, and area which actually from Shivaliks all the way up to the alpine pastures. So I think Himalaya Calling actually brings multiple stakeholders using the landscape approach. All the elements of the restoration of the landscape, I think, will be there. I think my last message is, as many of you have said, I think as individuals, I think we need to commit few things. I was showing you the water body which we have done, the place where we have decided to live in a village 6 months from now. And I think where we really want to get engaged with the other elements of the landscape, including degraded forest areas, including permaculture, which actually helps us to maintain the soil. And soil is one of the key things if you look at, we want to really restore the degraded areas. So thank you very much for inviting. IUCN is doing a great job leading this from the front, and you're getting 300 million hectare of degraded land as a pledge from 74 countries. Great. India actually has also put on table 26 million hectare, which is, I think, one of the front and leading nations. So thanks to the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change and all the partners and IUCN and all the wonderful people who are there right here at this event. I think collectively we can make it happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rathore, for sharing your perspective, the initiatives in the mountain, and also your experience on the landscape. And since you yourself is right now in very, very good surrounding landscape, which we could not see the background because of some technical problems. So thank you very much once again. And we also need one mountain ambassador also, because the mountain landscape is also very key or vital for sustaining ecosystem services, not only within the mountains, but also the downstream. Now, taking it further, we have so far shared the views from the international perspective, and also from the various our ambassadors, Mr. Ricky Cage and Dia Mirza, and from the UNCCD perspective, also from the government side. Now, let's see that what the corporate sector can support, because whenever we talk of the landscape restoration, the most of the businesses, they are dependent on the natural resources, and the sustainability of these natural resources is very vital, and there is a need to ensure that the biodiversity is conserved. And I'm very happy to have Mr. Siddharth Sharma, who is a Group Chief Sustainability Officer of Tata Sons. And Tata Group has taken a number of initiatives for not only for restoration, but also ensuring the biodiversity conservation. So Mr. Siddharth Sharma, he was appointed as a Group Chief Sustainability Officer of the Tata Sons. And before that, he has been a civil servant for more than 2 decades, starting his career with the Government of India and has served in various capacity, and he has handled very important assignments in key ministries, including Finance Ministry and also with the President's Secretariat of Finance Department, Urban Development, External Affairs. So welcome, Mr. Siddharth Sharma, and I would like you to share that as a corporate, what should be the corporate's responsibility towards this Bonn Challenge commitment and nature-based solutions or land degradation utility, and your group is taking what type of initiatives towards these challenges?
Thank you, Vivek. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you are audible.
So thank you for having me in this webinar today. Firstly, this decade is a very crucial decade for climate change, for land restoration, and a whole lot of other issues. So if you see between 2020 to 2030, it'll determine progress on our sustainable development goals. If we are to be consistent with the 1.5 degree to a 2 degree Celsius framework of carbon emissions by mid-century, we need to bring down our carbon emissions by about 20 gigatons per year. So the carbon emissions have to be 20 gigatons per year as compared to almost double, more than 2.5x at this point of time. So actually we are looking at a climate emergency, and these are all parts of the jigsaw puzzle, so as to say, because each one is connected to the other, and each one will have a major impact on whether we fall off the cliff or whether we are able to have a sustainable future ahead. Now, insofar as the Tatas are concerned, we have always led from the front, and that started in 1868 when the group was founded. And elements of sustainable planning, sustainable development, environmental consciousness, caring for communities could be seen even in the manner in which Jamshedpur as a city was planned. There was a lot of afforestation, the entire city planning, town planning was geared towards ensuring the best practices. Now, when I say that, the Tatas are really outliers. So when I speak on behalf of the Tata Group, I am not really in that sense talking about corporate India, because I think there is a lot of catching up that corporate India has to do vis-a-vis the Tatas. We have always been leaders in the field. I'm very happy to tell you that just very recently, we are the first conglomerate in Asia to be ranked globally at number 13 in the GlobeScan Sustainability Leaders Survey. So this is the first time this has happened. We used to figure in the Asia Pacific rankings, and it's for the first time that we have figured in the international rankings, and we have come in at number 13. No other Asian corporation, forget an Indian corporation, has done anything of this kind. We have been very, very attuned to this right from 1990 onwards. If you remember, there was this conversation that started about the ozone layer, the depletion of the ozone layer, biodiversity loss, global warming, and then there was the Rio Earth Summit in 1992. Now, Mr. Ratan Tata was one of the very few industrialists who was invited as a lead up to that summit. And based on his understanding of what was the issue at that point of time, the critical climate issue, we focused on climate very, very strongly and on sustainability. So in 2010, we enunciated a climate policy. In 2015, we enunciated a sustainability policy. In 2014, we formed the Tata Sustainability Group, which was a center of excellence, and which looks at environment, social, and governance issues across the group, and which is what I head right now. So I think it's been part of our DNA, the manner in which the Tata Group has gone about in sustainability imperatives has been very, very closely aligned to our value systems. It's been very closely aligned to business. And I must say here that we do not think of sustainability and profitability as two binaries. We look at business continuity, we look at sustainability as feeding into a conscious environment, and also in ensuring that businesses live for a long period of time. We are very focused on biodiversity. In fact, every year we celebrate a theme as part of our Tata Sustainability Month. And this year we had biodiversity for the entire month of July, an entire campaign around 100 of our group companies, 30 of which are publicly listed, And we released a biodiversity compendium at the end, which focused on the 15 top initiatives that the Tata companies took in terms of biodiversity conservation. I think what we are planning next year, it is there. And I think what the Honorable Minister said, that we need to have, the commitment is 26 million hectares. And the Joint Secretary said, if you take another 4 million hectares, we're going to go up to 30 million hectares, although that's not a formal commitment. I think at the Tata Group, I am looking very closely at how we can have afforestation as a major theme for the next year's sustainability campaign. And first of all, I would like to have any ideas, any partnership, any collaboration in this area, because as we know in our nationally defined contributions, we have to create a carbon sink of 2.5 to 3 billion tons. And that is the only area where Government of India is lagging behind in terms of our contributions. And this restoration of 30 million hectares will go a long way in creating, or in at least bridging that deficit on the carbon sink that we are encountering at the moment. So first and foremost, I would like to invite any areas of collaboration on a theme of afforestation, on a drive of afforestation for next year. And we would welcome, we have always partnered with the government on national priorities, and we would welcome that kind of a challenge for us and for all our partners so that we can deliver. Now, in terms of what is it that we have done, we've taken a lot of initiatives. As I said, there are 100 listed companies, 100 companies totally, of which 30 are publicly listed. And each one of them has sustainability as the DNA. So in this restricted period of time, I cannot, of course, take you through all the initiatives, but I can give you a broad overview, an illustrative list of some of the work done by the Tata company. So as you know, Lonavala is a global biodiversity hotspot. It's been recognized as a global biodiversity hotspot in the Western Ghats. And with growing development, industrialization, more footfalls, there was a lot of pressure on Lonavala, on the lakes, on the flora and fauna around there. And therefore, since 1970, Tata Power has been very, very focused on restoration of the flora, fauna, and the general ecosystem in Lonavala. The company targeted to achieve a minimum of 33% of forest cover in all our project sites through plantation of native trees by villagers. A total of 400 hectares was afforested by native species such as Saraka, Asoka, Terminalia bellerica, and Terminalia cebula. Nurseries and native saplings were also raised with the assistance of local communities. There were special efforts made to ensure protection of the endangered golden mahasir fish in local lakes and rivers, and an artificial hatchery was set up. And awareness campaigns were organized. So this is what Tata Power did as part of ensuring a restoration of the natural ecosystem around Lonavala. Tata Chemicals, and I think you have associated with Tata Chemicals in their plants at Meterpur. What they did was that they created a 150-acre open scrub forest reserve at Meterpur, which earlier used to be non-agricultural fallow land. And what has happened after their decision to do it is that the bird species strength, which used to be around 40 there, has gone up to 104, which includes 11 species of raptors, some of which are endangered, and reptiles.
Hello, Siddharth, you're not audible. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I think some technical problem. Huh?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Siddharth, can you listen us? I think there is some connectivity problem.
I think we can give sir just couple of minutes. I think he'll.
Sir, Mr. Siddharth has joined me.
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Siddharth, have you rejoined? I think some connection problem. He's trying to reconnect. So in between he joins, I think he's just calling you. Hello. I think Mr. Siddharth has some Wi-Fi connectivity problem. So taking it further, now we have to listen the action on the ground, and the real action lies at the subnational level or the state level. So today, for the various initiatives which I've been taking at the state level, we have a Principal Secretary from the Government of Bihar, Mr. Deepak Kumar Singh. He will be speaking about various initiatives at the ground level for landscape restoration with Government of Bihar is undertaking. So before he starts, we have also received a message from the Deputy Chief Minister of the Bihar that what initiatives Bihar is undertaking through afforestation and various initiatives. So let's first see the message from Deputy Chief Minister of Bihar, Mr. Sushil Modi ji.
भारत की फॉरेस्ट पॉलिसी यानी वन नीति के अनुसार मैदानी इलाकों में 20% भूभाग पर हरित आवरण से आच्छादित करने का लक्ष्य निर्धारित किया गया है। लेकिन आपको ज्ञात है कि पहले बिहार और झारखंड एक राज्य था, लेकिन 2000 में बिहार के बंटवारे के बाद जो वन क्षेत्र था वो झारखंड में चला गया और 2011 में बिहार में केवल 9% फॉरेस्ट एरिया या जो हरित क्षेत्र था वो केवल 9% रह गया। हमारी सरकार ने 2012 में हरियाली मिशन प्रारंभ करने का निर्णय लिया और उसका परिणाम कि 2019 तक 23 करोड़ से ज़्यादा पौधे बिहार के अंदर लगाए गए। साथ ही साथ किसानों की आमदनी को बढ़ाने के लिए हम लोगों ने एग्रो फॉरेस्ट्री यानी कृषि वानिकी योजना प्रारंभ की, जिसमें किसानों के को नर्सरी लगाने के लिए हम प्रोत्साहित करते हैं और उस नर्सरी में जो पौधे तैयार होते हैं उनको सरकार वापस खरीद लेती है और फिर इसको किसानों में वितरित करती है। और ये जो एग्रो फॉरेस्ट्री के जो पौधे हैं ये मुख्य रूप से कास्ट आधारित उद्योगों में काम आते हैं, जैसे पॉपुलर का पौधा जिस पर आगे जाकर और प्लाईवुड या विनियर आदि का निर्माण किया जा सकता है। एग्रो फॉरेस्ट्री का लाभ भी बिहार के किसानों को बड़े पैमाने पर मिला है। साथ ही साथ हम लोगों ने जल जीवन हरियाली अभियान प्रारंभ किया और जिसके अंतर्गत वन विभाग ने और 9 अगस्त को बिहार पृथ्वी दिवस के अवसर पर और 2,51,00,000 पौधे लगाने का निर्णय लिया था। और इस अभियान में हम लोगों ने समाज के सभी वर्गों को जोड़ने का काम किया और अभी तक के जो आंकड़े प्राप्त हुए हैं उसके अनुसार बिहार में 3,57,00,000 से ज़्यादा पौधे लगाए जा चुके हैं। और हम लोगों ने ये भी निर्णय लिया कि अगले साल 9 अगस्त को हम बिहार में 5 करोड़ से ज़्यादा पौधे लगाने का काम करेंगे। मुझे पूरी उम्मीद है कि यद्यपि वन क्षेत्र झारखंड में चला गया, लेकिन जो बचा हुआ बिहार का इलाका है वहाँ पर जो हरित आवरण है उसको हम ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा बढ़ाने का प्रयास करेंगे।
पर्यावरण, वन एवं जलवायु परिवर्तन विभाग बिहार द्वारा जनहित में जारी।
Thank you very much. And the message was that the initiatives for taking more and more action through afforestation in the Bihar state, and we just saw now. I welcome Mr. Deepak Kumar Singh, Principal Secretary, Forests, Government of Bihar. Mr. Deepak Kumar Singh is an IAS officer of 1992 batch of Bihar cadre, and he has handled several important portfolios in state government as well as central government. His important portfolios are being Principal Secretary in the Labor Resources Department and also CEO of the Bihar Skill Development Mission. And he is quite passionate for driving the environmental, forest and climate change issues. So let's welcome Mr. Deepak Kumar Singh and requesting him to share his initiatives for landscape restoration and addressing this land degradation.
Thanks, Vivek. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible.
First, before I start, I will just keep my presentation very brief. But before that, I just wanted to show a 2 minutes video. If you can permit, then I can just show a video which is actually a just summary of the activities we are doing. And after that, then I will just briefly present. Vivek, if you can give me permission for sharing this screen.
Already giving. Oh, it has been done. I think you can share your screen.
जल के बिना न जीवन है न हरियाली साउंड इसलिए हमने जल से काम शुरू किया। गया का ब्रह्मयोगी जल इतना सूखा था कि आसपास के बोरवेल भी सूख गए थे। आज यही ब्रह्मयोगी को गया का लंग्स यानी फेफड़ा कहा जाता है। मानपुरा के सख्त और नंगे खरहरी पहाड़ 27 से भी ज्यादा प्रजाति के पेड़ हैं। पत्थर और मिट्टी से बने चेक डैम से फर्टाइल मिट्टी को रोककर यहाँ हरियाली बढ़ाई गई है। औरंगाबाद के नलबहरी पहाड़ को पथरीला और सूखा होने के कारण लोग उसे लाल पहाड़ करके बुलाते थे। आज वहां खसखस और न जाने कई और पेड़ लगाए गए हैं ताकि हरियाली के साथ लोगों को आमदनी मिले। मुंगेर का पथरीला खड़गपुर हिल आज घना वन बन चुका है। इन सब के अलावा विभाग ने लोगों के सहयोग से 10 सालों में 23 करोड़ से भी ज्यादा पेड़ लगाए हैं और पिछले 3 महीनों में 3 करोड़ 73 हजार से भी ज्यादा पेड़ लगाए हैं। दीदी के सहयोग से विभाग ने 68 लाख से भी ज्यादा पेड़ लगाए और 150 से ज्यादा नर्सरी की स्थापना की। कृषि वानिकी के तहत किसान को फसल के साथ कमाई वाले पौधे जैसे शीशम, सागवान, पॉपुलर दिए गए। उन्होंने 19 लाख से भी ज्यादा पेड़ लगाए हैं। जब इतने सारे लोग हमारे साथ जुड़कर पौधा लगा रहे हैं तो जल और जीवन पीछे कैसे रह सकता है।
Thank you, Vivek. So this was just a brief, although of what we are doing. Bihar has a very small portion of recorded forest area, as our Deputy Chief Minister also told in his presentation. We just have 6,800 square kilometer of recorded forest area. That is around 0.7 million hectares, around 0.7 million hectares. So in Bihar, our priority was on the one hand, the restoration of the forest land in the recorded forest area, as well as increasing the forest cover outside the forest area, because that was how we could increase the green cover in the state. So the work has started in the direction of restoration of forest cover, mainly since 2012. And since 2012 till now, we have done soil and moisture conservation work the restoration of forest cover in an area of about 2 lakh hectares, that is 0.2 million hectares. We have done this work in last 10 years, and every year now we have increased that, and now we are trying to increase that target. But we have a limitation because, as I said, that we only have 0.7 million hectare forest area in the state. So our main strategy is to increase the forest cover or the green cover outside the recorded forest area. So that is we have taken various pronged strategies for that. The number one was to involve the farmers to increase plantation of land on their farmlands, and that is what also we have taken on a large scale since last 10 years. And as the Chief Minister has said, that we have planted around 23 crore, that is 230 million trees in last 10 years. This year we had targeted planting 2.51 crore, that is 25 million trees in 2 months of monsoon, starting from 5th June, the World Environment Day, to 9th August, which is celebrated in Bihar as Bihar Earth Day. And we crossed that target. Till now, we have planted around 3.73 crore, that is around 37.3 million trees in this just in this 3 months of period. So in this, we have involved the various stakeholders. Number one was the farmers. The second, as was mentioned in the video which I just showed, the Jivika group. Jivika is a livelihood group, and in Bihar, there are around more than 1 lakh Jivika group, and they have a membership of around 1 crore, that is more than 10 million members are there in these livelihood groups. And we have involved them in plantation on their own land. So that is how this. Then the third thing was that we involved as many NGOs and voluntary organizations as we could in plantation outside the forest area. Then fourthly, we were talking about CSR. We also involved the big companies which have their establishments in Bihar, like the power sector companies of NTPC and Power Grid, as well as the oil sector companies of Indian Oil, and they also contributed towards plantation. And that is how we are trying to increase the plantation area and green coverage. And I would be happy to say that in Bihar, we have around 7.3% of the total geographical area as the recorded forest area. And at the same time, as far as the last survey which is done by FSI based on 2016-17 is concerned, we have 6.85% of geographical area outside the forest as forest cover. So that is a good sign and an indication of what we are trying to achieve by increasing the green cover in the state, by restoring the ecology, and by increasing the carbon sequestration in the state. So that is our main strategy, and we are going ahead with that strategy. In the forest area also we are doing, what we do is that we take the watershed map, and in fact we will be giving you some more success stories and some more case studies of what we have done. In fact, the case study which has been uploaded is not that satisfactory. We are trying to, documentation is slightly poor, so we are trying to collect that data, and we will be uploading more case studies. One case study you saw in the video which just showed you, that Lal Pahad, it is in Aurangabad district, and it was a completely barren hills. It was called Lal Pahadi or the Red Hills. It was completely barren, and now it is completely covered with green. Similarly, we have done extensive work in the district of Bihar Sharif around Rajgir, which is a famous tourist place and a historical place. There are 5 hills, and we have done extensive soil and moisture conservation work, and we take the watershed as our main unit for working, and then we do the restoration work by building small check dams, loose boulder dams, and then big structures on the downhills which can restore water and which can regenerate the greenery. So that is how we are doing it. And although we are talking about the Bonn challenge, but my only concern, the other concern which I would like to put up on this platform is that on the one hand, we are trying to regenerate the forest by restoring the degraded land. On the other hand, the diversion of forest for other developmental activities and the cutting of the big trees, that is also a big point of concern which I think you should take up. Because on the one hand, the a replacement of a big tree cannot be a new plantation. So we have to preserve the old trees also. We have to preserve the rich biodiversity areas also. And there has to be a responsible and sustainable development so that we can also preserve whatever forest resources we have, apart from restoring the degraded forest resources. Thank you, Vivek.
Thank you very much, Deepakji, and for sharing the initiatives with such a passion in Bihar, and I think new milestone and targets. And already we received one comment from Mr. Samir Sinha that Bihar is really doing very great work, amazing work being done in Bihar. So that is one of the compliment for Bihar, and as well as you, since you are guiding and leading the entire initiative. And now coming to another state, Telangana, another passionate officer, Shri Lokesh Jaiswal, is the Principal Chief Conservator of Forest, and he has taken a number of initiatives in Telangana state for landscape restoration, for meeting the Bonn challenge pledges. As we are running short of time, sir, the floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Vivek. And good evening to all the panelists and all the participants. As told by Mr. Vivek, Telangana, in fact, came up after reorganization of the erstwhile Andhra Pradesh and in 2014. And our Chief Minister, Sri K.C. Chandrasekhar Rao, he wanted to have Telangana not only doing well on the economic development front, but also to have environmental concern together with it. And with that vision, in fact, he initiated the state flagship program called Telangana Ku Haita Haran, means you garland the Telangana with all greenery. And after a lot of discussion with all the stakeholders, it was decided to have almost 2.3 billion trees to be planted, both inside the forest area and also outside the forest area. And coming to the landscape, like the entire target was actually distributed among the natural landscape, that is the forest area, rural landscape, and the urban landscape. That is how the thing moved. And in fact, there has been a very strong political will right from beginning, with the lead taken by the Chief Minister himself, and ensuring that that political will is not only at the highest level, but even up to the village level, that is the Gram Panchayat level with sarpanches and all those things. And very strong institutional mechanism was formulated with close monitoring for like planning or implementation, and also like what is happening outcome and all those things. Right from the Chief Secretary at the state level, then the district collector at the district level, and up to the Gram Panchayat level with the sarpanch. So very strong institutional mechanism also brought into involving all the stakeholders. What I mean, like not only like the departmental people across the departments, but also the political personalities involved, then all the NGOs, all the other stakeholders, like comprising of the corporate sectors, even all the farmers, all the other people who could be brought into this, they were involved, including the youth and children also. In fact, if you see the achievement, like right from 15-16, we can say out of 2.3 billion trees, we have almost achieved 2.1. This is the latest figure. And if you come to the hectares part, out of the total like 2.66 million hectare forest area, forest landscape, 1.2 million hectare is supposed to be degraded. And until this actually we have almost achieved 0.45 million hectares. So that goes to, and actually we have to go the long way to achieve the rest of the things. And all these efforts actually, if you see, like it has helped in increasing the forest cover for the last 2 consecutive Forest Survey of India reports in Telangana. Apart from that, if you include like what are the other policy decisions, other things were taken up in Telangana. So in the initial stage only, we have tried to address all the threats which are actually causing the degradation of the forest landscape. And based on that, actually, all our expectations of increasing the forest cover in different parameters were also planned. And we have tried to strengthen the collaborations and partnership and participation of all the stakeholders. That has gone in a long way, actually, in involving all the stakeholders in this program as such. And incentives were actually incorporated in the plan itself, right from the village level to the state level. Very good incentive mechanism was built in, and they were actually honored during all the functions, public function actually at the state level and also the district level. And apart from that, actually some disincentives, like if the 2 acts were actually modified, the Panchayat Raj Act and also the Municipal Act, in which those people were actually made to commit for the better survival of the plantations which were raised actually in the rural or in the urban areas, making it mandatory to have survival rate of at least 85%. And very strong like monitoring and communication mechanism also developed. And throughout almost 3-4 months, altogether, like a lot of pre and after and during the planting season, a lot of efforts were made to communicate to all the people and involve all the people. And this is not only like involved all the stakeholders, but also has given a very huge, you can say, like the job opportunities for all the people actually, including the poor people actually all around the villages. And in fact, during this COVID also actually a lot of people, because of job loss and all, they were benefited, and a lot of jobs were created for them. So I can say, like in Telangana, the efforts have been successful as far as the first landscape restoration is concerned because of the strong political will, supported by the strong institutional mechanism and involvement and participation of all the stakeholders. And you can say the timely review and inputs, whether the technical or other inputs which is required to all the stakeholders. And this is what we have done, but there's a long way to go. Like we have just completed about 1/3 of our place of 1.2 million hectares to be restored. And if you come to the issues, like what I can say, like because we are subnational level, and in fact, all the commitments which are being made by the national authorities, by you can say by the national government, I think without consultation with the subnational level, because all these efforts require a lot of money. In fact, actually, we have done our exercise of doing all kind of forest interventions which is required, whether it is like protection of the forest or doing the soil and moisture conservation works or the fire protection or the silviculture operations, and the major part of like planting activities of all kind of planting activities inside the forest area and outside. We require almost, you can say, 10,000 crores rupees. Whereas including Campa, which is actually is the only source with the state government also at the national level, we have hardly about 2,000 crores. So there is a lot of gap. So I think I will request the IUCN and all to come forward and see like how this gap can be like minimized. Of course, we are involving all the corporate sectors also in a big way, because Hyderabad being the IT sector and other sectors, like a lot of companies are there, but we are involving all of them. But still, there is a gap and a lot of finances required. And the second thing would be like some sort of capacity building, maybe from the IUCN or the national authorities are required. In fact, actually, at Hyderabad, we had conducted a workshop involving all the international agencies in which Mr. Vivek was there from the IUCN. We had WRI, we had UFRO, you have USAID, and all the national agencies also on this aspect only last year in the month of November. And we had a very good feedback from them. And I think our all officers and all the stakeholders, they were also quite enlightened, the new concept and how we have to go about it. And the third thing is the monitoring reports. Now, if you see, we have all kind of conventions, whether it is biodiversity, whether it is land degradation, whether it is Bonn challenge, or it is for water or for the other things. Every time, like, we have different monitoring reports to be given. So these are all the difficulties from the subnational level. Like, I request IUCN to kindly have a good discussion at the ministry level and come out with one simple format, because ultimately all these restoration activities are taken up at the very ground level, at the village level, where I have to ensure that my officer or all the other stakeholders are quite comfortable with the kind of information or the kind of inputs we require from them. Even though the works are the same, like all the forestry interventions which are taken in a last bit of our administrative unit, this is the block, is the same, but that only all interventions are getting to different indicators and parameters required by the different agencies. So my request would be like some thoughts should be given on this and by the ministry, and also because last time when I had raised this issue under this COP14 among all the international agencies, they were sitting there, right from United Nations Forum for Forest, and then IUCN, and then USAID, then others. I simply asked, why can't you people can have a simple reporting mechanism? And they were not in a position to say anything on that, because they said that we are working on that. So my request would be from the ministry and also from the IUCN now, kindly do something on this, so that whatever we do here is reported and could be validated also with all the national or international agencies in future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for your suggestions and sharing the action which Telangana state is taking, and some of your concerns and suggestions in terms of the monitoring and ensuring the finance. These are the really very good and relevant issues, I think, which Mr. Takpa as a joint secretary will be taking further necessary action for addressing those things. And we are already running short of time, and it was a really very learning.
Vivek, can I just come in for a minute, because I had got dropped out because of a poor Wi-Fi connection.
Yeah, Siddharth, you can continue. And
it's all right, because we are running out of time. I mean, the point is that I had spoken about what Tata Power was doing, what Tata Chemicals was doing, what PC, all the companies are doing. But what I'm saying is that since you have Jigmet here and you have the IUCN here and you have the principal chief conservators of forests or the principal secretaries of the various state governments, I think we would be very willing to partner, our group companies would be very willing to partner in land restoration, in afforestation drives, etc. If anyone has an interest and wants to partner with the Tata Group and our group companies, I would request them to get in touch with us with a proposal. And we will see how we can incorporate this. As I said, for my next Tata Sustainability Month campaign in 2021, I want to have afforestation as a very, very key focus area. And therefore, I am making this kind of request to the JS of the Ministry of Environment and Forests and all the other officers of the state governments, that if any of you have viable proposals which you would like us to consider, or where you think our group companies can partner, we would be very willing to do that. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Siddharth, and for offering the support. And this was the thing I was just about to speak. Because what happens at the state level when we are in the government, in different capacities, maybe somebody working in Bihar or maybe Telangana or some other states. So at the state government level, there is need to have some connect with the corporate thing also. Just like after joining IUCN only, I also came to know that Tata Group in various initiatives, how they are taking action on the ground also for biodiversity conservation, or even the mining companies, how they are taking some of the initiatives for restoration and all those things. And when we are in the state government at the government level, that sort of a communication or awareness with the state government official, that is not there. So it is a good platform where luckily we have from your group, you as a panelist today, for sharing the good work which you are doing, and also the offer to support such type of a landscape restoration initiative. And certainly the ministry will take note of it. And Mr. Jigme Takka, when we are taking a national level or international level pledges, and India has one of the largest pledges under the Bonn Challenge today. And it does not mean that it is only the state actors that matter. We have to have the cooperation from each and everyone, the community participation, the corporates, the business groups, because ultimately, if you restore the land, the soil health is improved, the water table is improved, your environmental services are improved. So together we can, and everybody will be benefited. And this must be, I think, one of the key messages which we should take, that the partnerships really matter. Partnerships between the state actors, partnership with the corporates at the village or the community level, and ensuring that the resources which are required for meeting these challenges, if there is a will, certainly there is a way to find out all these resources. But the main thing is one should have a will at all the levels. And I think we really had a very good session today. And from the panelists, if you want to just have one final key message before we conclude today, because already I think the discussion generated a lot of interest, and we had, I think, panelists from all the spectrum, from the global level, from the UNCCD Convention, then from the International Center for Integrated Mountain, then the UN ambassadors, and from the corporate sector, from the government level at the highest level. The support which we have got for this today's webinar has been tremendous. So Siddharth, your final one key takeaway or message for today's discussion.
I think what you said, Vivek, that collaboration is the key, because the scale of challenges is so vast that not one single entity can do it. And also, I think the message which Dia said, that it's ultimately for every individual to have a sustainable lifestyle. So you actually build it bottom up, and you ensure that there's a mainstreaming of sustainability. And as I said, that the Tatas would have always partnered in national priorities, in national development goals, and we would be very willing to take this forward, provided there are viable proposals that we receive and we can sit together and examine it.
Thank you very much. And may I request Mr. Deepak Kumar Singh for one key message from today's deliberation?
Thank you, Vivek. I think it's a very good suggestion from Tata Group, and we would be certainly willing to cooperate with them, and we would be sending project to them. I will take from you the coordinates. And the deliberations today, I mean, certainly there is no second opinion that for the sustenance, we have to restore our forest area, we have to restore our forest land, and there has to be a complete, it is not only plantation as such, but there has to be a complete ecological restoration of the entire area. It is not only the tree cover only, but it is also the regeneration of the forest, it is also the rehabilitation of the wildlife. So all these areas have to be taken together. So that is, I think, and thank you for organizing this.
Thank you very much. And may I request Mr. Jigme Takka, Joint Secretary? I think he is not there. So before we hear from Ms. Stewart from IUCN, Mr. Lokesh Jaiswal, if you want to just have one key sentence as a takeaway for today.
I think, as rightly told by all the panelists, I think together with collaboration and participation, we can always meet the Bonn challenge.
Thank you, sir. And I think partnership is the key. So may I now request Mr. Stewart for some final words before we conclude today's webinar?
Okay, thanks very much, Vivek. And I think actually it really has been a fascinating example. We sort of started, looking at sort of the broader, the start of FLR and the global framing, and then really looked at it's just time and again, just very encouraging, just hearing what's happening at national and subnational level in India. And I think, I think to me, it really illustrates that these things don't happen unless there's a real demand for it. And I think that's one of the key aspects of forest landscape restoration, that it is out there to meet real needs and to address and solve real problems. So I think actually that my take-home message is that as we continue to work towards 2030, we need to really make sure that we are generating the evidence and making sure that we're putting in place the initiatives that are actually meeting real demands, real requirements of both society and government. And I think a particular challenge, but also a particular opportunity will exist now in the next couple of years as the world struggles to pick up the pieces from the COVID-19 pandemic. Economies will be under pressure. There will be a need to create jobs. There will be a need to make sure that we are actually underpinning other key attributes of life and land productivity, food production, etc. So I think that's where we should be aiming our efforts.
Thank you, Stuart, and I thank on behalf of IUCN all the panelists and all the participants for today's webinar. And it has been quite a long webinar, but the support which this webinar gathered, in which the panelists from all the spectrum we had, right from the global perspective, the corporate sector, at the national level, at the subnational level, I think the key takeaways will certainly address the land degradation challenges and the pledges in respect of the Bonn challenge, landscape restoration or land degradation neutrality targets during the beginning, now is setting the stage for this decade for the ecosystem restoration. I think through the partnership and through the right will, we will be able to meet the objective and targets. And with these words, on behalf of IUCN, I thank you everyone. Thank you very much. Namaskar.